It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, November 24th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that hopes the Flyers can recover today versus the Rangers, much like I have recovered from my Thanksgiving meal.
Yeah, it took me a while to recover, but I'm back.
All right, we are going to talk Flyers Isles, preview that matchup today against the Rangers, and check in on the Metro, all on today's show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on the app formerly known as Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. You can subscribe or follow our show over on YouTube. We're on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. You'll get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, Wednesday night before the holiday, the Flyers fell to the New York Islanders 3-2. The lineup did change a little bit. Mark Stahl was officially activated off IR. Belpedio sat, much like we talked about, as the obvious choice for that. Stahl was paired up with Zamula. And, this game, I think, kind of played into the Islanders' hands a little bit.
It did. I just felt like they had the wrong game plan. They weren't. To me, it's like, why are you going to go into the Islanders and try and beat them at their own game? They've been playing this game for much longer than a lot of your guys have been playing this game, and they're used to it. Like this is like everyday life for them. So when it's low scoring, they're fine with that. They're fine with that because they know their strength in their goaltender. They're fine with that because they still have a good defense, whether they don't score a lot or not. So that's standard operating procedure for them.
Yeah, it was interesting because we said they had to score 3 goals in order to win. Yep. They scored 2, and they did not win.
Right.
And the other thing we talked about, which, man, it is so frustrating. Brock Nelson against the Flyers is so infuriating.
Yeah, we talked about him. He does well.
He does. And, of course, he gets 2 of the Islanders' 3 goals in this game. That third goal definitely was a dagger for the Flyers. It just really felt like the game was out of reach at that point. But you do have to give the Flyers credit for really coming back and switching up tactics in the third.
Yeah, no question. I mean, they came out with more fervor and definitely were playing better. But you wondered where that was at the beginning. Like, why wasn't that the game plan?
Yeah, it was interesting because you look at the Flyers' third period versus the other 2 periods. Now, I understand when you're playing with desperation, sometimes that naturally happens and you can overwhelm the other team. But the Flyers got so many more good quality shots in the third period than they did prior in the game. They just couldn't score. Now, the Islanders also blocked a ton of shots and got great goaltending. So there was that, but you really look at the overall shot quality there, and the difference between the first 2 periods and the third period is remarkable. I mean, the Flyers were up in high danger chances 5-on-5 in the third, 7-2 over the Islanders. That is just a huge margin right there. And they got a huge percentage of the scoring chances. Like everything was clicking for them except the puck going in the net.
Right. I mean, it was, you saw that they had a lot of the shots being kept to the outside. I would say the Islanders had a lot easier time going to the net, especially Nelson, than the Flyers did to theirs. That was something. Now, that's not to say Sorokin wasn't out of position a few times. He was. Like, there were some scrambly moments, but the Flyers just didn't have it in them to be able to convert on any of those, where the Islanders were able to, clear the puck out. Those are the difference in the game many times.
Yeah, and I thought there was just some key defensive errors that happened to lead to the Islanders' goals. The back door was wide open for Nelson's second goal of the game, which again was kind of a dagger. And
Yeah.
I think that was a huge factor. There was just some missed coverage defensively. And I think, John Tortorella post game, I was standing there and you could see it in his eyes. Like he was like, oh man, if these one or two guys had just played a little better, they might have won that game. And he did his thing where he called out, there's a couple of guys that aren't playing up to snuff. Didn't mention names, but you could probably guess who he was referring to, right?
Sure. But okay, I mean, that's all well and good. But again, there's part of this delusion like this team could actually stay up with the winning teams in the Metro. And I think that's part of John's problem. I think that's part of his problem because I think he's expecting things that you just can't get from some of these players. Like what we said, Noah Cates. You're not getting 40 points out of Noah Cates playing center. It's just not going to happen. You're not getting any points from Morgan Frost on the bench. You're not getting really any better defense with Mark Stahl in there. I hate to say it, but you're just not. And so, he falls back on these things and then kind of is just like, well, if Lawton was scoring more or, I get it. I know who the guys are, but there's only so much you can get out of these guys. And I feel like they're not playing to these guys' strengths. He's still trying to get them to conform to his system. And I think there needs to be some adjustments.
Yeah, I do. I think you have to put a system in place so it's plug and play. I get that,
Yeah.
Especially with the way injuries work in the NHL, you have to put a system together where you can slot pretty much anybody in and they'll know what to do. But at the same time, if you have certain personnel, you have to play to their strengths. And
Yes.
I do think that in this game in particular, you could see the difference happening, especially when you have a team like the Islanders that's just going to block a lot of shots and shut you down defensively. It's just not going to work all of the time. But again, I do want to call back to that third period where, they were able to adjust. And hopefully that's a signal that we can see that, well, they're playing the Islanders again this weekend. Maybe they can make that adjustment from the beginning of the game this time around.
Right. But what I'm afraid of is that adjustment means there'll be no real young players on the blue line. That's what I'm afraid the adjustment is.
Yeah. I wonder if he puts Belpedio back in. I wonder if he does just because
I think he's going to put Belpedio back in over Zamula, but like I said, I don't think that helps the Flyers long term. I just think this is just to make John happy, and he figures that's his best defense right now. But again, I think when you're looking at this, you want to stay up near the top of the division, which I think in his head he does. You're going to be treading water like you are. There's going to be, again, this is a tough league. So you win 5, you might lose 5. You know what I mean? It's going to be like that. And then at what point during the season, this is my big thing. At what point during the season do you say, okay, yeah, I think we need to focus on the rebuild more? Because every time days pass, guys are getting less time and, maybe some are getting some time in Lehigh. That's fine. But we've pointed out there's probably some guys in Lehigh that could help this team actually and still get development, but it's not an option right now.
Yeah, the Phantoms, of course, did win that game on Tuesday night as well, and we saw that top line get into the scoring action in that one. But I'm not sure it's that dire right now, but I do see little things here and there where you can see they're trying to win. And I don't blame them for trying to win. They're all professional athletes. They want to win too.
Nope, that's fine by me. But do it in such a way that it's
Yeah.
also going to benefit you down the line.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. I think that it'll be interesting to see what they do against the Rangers differently to match up against that team lineup wise versus what they do in a rematch against the Islanders. And with, these games back to back, it's going to be a real tough weekend for the Flyers. And we will talk about those New York Rangers who are playing quite well this season coming up next.
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Have you ever wondered why you struggle sometimes? Therapy helps you figure out what's holding you back so you can work for yourself instead of against yourself. It's helpful for determining how to make decisions more effectively, learning positive coping skills, and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma or a specific incident. Anyone can benefit. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Make your brain your best friend with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnNHL today to get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/LockedOnNHL.
Next week, we will start off the week as we do each and every Monday with our Nemesis of the week. We'll recap the Flyers versus Rangers game and Flyers versus Isles part 2. The New York Rangers, man, they are having a heck of a season so far. One could say they are in the Peter Laviolette honeymoon period, as that is wont to happen with a lot of head coaches, but I think with Laviolette in particular. And interestingly, they've been playing really well without Adam Fox. He's on injured reserve right now, as is Philip Hedl. Obviously you never want to wish injury on anybody, but Philip Hedl has also been a bit of a Flyers killer in the past.
Yes.
So that's a little bit of a break for the Flyers. They shut out the Pens on Wednesday night as the Flyers were playing the Islanders. Before that, they lost to the Stars, but won 4 games before that. They are 13-3-1 on the season. Ooh, a really good start to this season, right?
Yeah, losing to the Stars is no shame, right? The Stars could easily win the Stanley Cup. There's a few things that are going really well here. I mean, Alexis Lafreniere on the Panarin line with Trocheck is going really well. And it's not like Lafreniere is just living off of what Panarin gives him, because he's still got to be able to get into breakaway position. He still has to score. You could put me on a line with Panarin, and Panarin's going to find me, but I'm not going to score. And that's the thing I think people are now starting to realize is, yes, Lafreniere just needed this little extra confidence and better line mates. I've talked about it for over a year, and I really harped on it to start this year that maybe Laviolette would be that coach to do it, and he did. So that's a big thing. Mika Zibanejad is just starting to get on track now, which is probably a scary proposition too, because he wasn't doing that great. But I got to tell you, the most shocking thing, not that he's playing, because nobody's going to be shocked that he's playing, but the fact that Erik Gustafsson has 12 points in 17 games and playing somewhat respectable defense is the story of the year for me, because we all know who Erik Gustafsson is. Even if you've tuned in from another show, he's played for so many teams, and now all of a sudden he's figured it out. It's crazy. But yeah, so I'd watch out for Zibanejad this game, because he's only got 2 goals, but he's playing better lately. Their power play is pretty good at 24%. The PK is pretty good at 82%. Their power play is better than that 24%, though. You don't really want to put that power play on there and really test, because there's too many good shots on that power play.
Yeah, I was going to say Erik Gustafsson is 5th on the team in scoring right now.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Or tied for 4th. And that is absolute bonkers. But yeah, I think that, this Rangers team is finding ways to win because
They
I
are.
do think that they are beatable, but they have guys with excellent shots that can finish. And I think that's really the difference between the Flyers and the Rangers here is that the Flyers can get them to a certain point, but they've struggled on and off this season with the finish, whereas the Rangers just have guys that'll finish no matter what.
Right.
And I think that's the difference because if you look at, some of the numbers, Rangers have the edge on the Flyers on shooting percentage, but Flyers and Rangers have the same goals per game essentially.
Hmm.
On the goals for side, Rangers are second in the NHL in least goals per game allowed at 2.29. Flyers are 11th at 2.8. There's a difference in ranking, but in terms of where they're sitting, it's not a huge gap between the two teams. It really just is a combination of the finish and then we will obviously have to talk about the Rangers goaltending, which is coming from a place we would not have thought of before the season started.
No, it's true. Yeah, the big thing is, like I said, we could talk about all these things, but normally Zibanejad would probably have about 8 to 9 goals right now, maybe even 10. So they're probably due on that front. Kreider does have 10, and Kreider always plays
Mhm.
well against the Flyers, as we've talked about. He gets up for those Flyers games. He's told me so. So like that's something where you always have to worry about a Chris Kreider because he's a finisher. Will Cully is now a young guy who could score a little bit, but also play the tough game. So if he's out there against the Flyers' fourth line, he's not going to get pushed around. I don't know if this is a game that satisfies anything to have a fight early, but I'm pretty sure that's what the Flyers are going to do is have a fight early. And like I think the way you win this game is by trying to keep the puck away from the Rangers because Artemi Panarin is on a tear. He's one of
Yeah.
the 3 or 4 best players in the league this year.
Yeah, I think so. And I think you're right about Zibanejad. I think that he is absolutely due, and he tends to play well against the Flyers overall.
Yeah.
Um, I think that third line, to your point, with Will Cully could be very dangerous. Benino has a lot of experience
Benino's
against the Flyers.
surprisingly playing well. I thought he was maybe a little
Yeah,
past it, but he's still good on the penalty kill for sure.
yeah, I think so as well. So it's going to be a situation where the Flyers have to really play well and match up well against all four of the Rangers lines. I think, it's lucky that the Flyers are at home for this one just because of last change. But the Black Friday game kind of looms a little bit, but the Flyers have had some amazing wins in the past on Black Friday and have crashed and burned. So
Sleepy starts.
um,
We've seen sleepy starts.
yeah, yeah, a little, tryptophan from, Thanksgiving,
Yep.
uh, bleeding over into the game, but, we obviously cannot I can't believe I'm saying this sentence, but we cannot talk about the New York Rangers without talking about Jonathan Quick, who is 5-0-1 in 7 games, 1.68 goals against average, 940 save percentage. Like, what year is it, Russ?
I know. It's funny to say that because at the beginning of the year, I was like, based on what I saw off of Quick last year, I was like, all right, maybe if he only plays like 22 games, he can get past it, but he's past it. And early on, that is not the case. Like it's gotten to the point where I even picked him up in fantasy. So if you know
Wow.
that I've done that, and I did that 3 weeks ago because I saw the difference in Jonathan Quick. But I don't know if it's going to last. I don't think they're going to face Quick anyhow. They're going to probably face Shesterkin. But still, that's no bargain. It's just, yeah, Shesterkin maybe isn't at his level of play yet since the injury, but he's still Igor Shesterkin. You're still going to have to watch out. So either way, it's going to be a problem. But the other thing about the Rangers, even without Fox, is they still have good speed on the blue line. And
Yeah.
that speed on the blue line, Keandre Miller is very, while there is the occasional turnover from him, he's very athletic, as you know, and
Yep.
he's gonna cause problems. Lindgren plays that really hard, all around good defensive style hockey, but also can skate. Their defense is actually pretty well balanced. Schneider's coming into his own, so this is not going to be an easy task. And that's why the Flyers really have to have the right game plan here.
Well, that's where I wonder, to your point, if they're going to try and bait Truba into something, because if they're going to get anybody to bite, it might be him.
It might be, but the problem is if you start winding up Truba, he's going to start creaming some of your guys. And I'm not sure that's the smart move. Like, he doesn't necessarily do it all on his own by himself. But if that sort of tension is in the game, he's one of the worst guys in the league to.
Totally. That's what I worry about, because he's
Yeah.
like a dirty hit machine.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah, there's no filter in Jacob Trouba, so you have to really play that one carefully. Now, as you said, if you can get him off the ice on some scuffle situation, sure, that benefits him, but I don't know. I don't know how many times you're going to try and risk that.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. All right. Well, we'll see who the Rangers put in net today, whether it's Shesterkin or Quick. Gotta think that Carter Hart goes back out for the Flyers as
Yep.
well. Should be a fun afternoon matchup. Maybe hit the stores, then go to the game, and then go do some more shopping for Black Friday.
Or go to the game and just shop online while you're at the game. In between
That's fair
periods.
too. That is fair too. We will be looking at the Metro. It is a couple of weeks where the Flyers are playing nothing but Metro teams. So next week is a big one as well. We will talk about that coming up next. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. GameTime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. They've got killer deals on last minute tickets and a best price guarantee. You can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting excited for all the fun you'll have. My favorite part of the GameTime app is that it's great for getting notified about those flash deals and last minute tickets. Plus, you can get that all important view from your seat. I've bought tickets for the theater, for the WNBA up here in New York, and had an amazing experience. They've got deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even up to an hour after it starts. It is the place to find the last minute seat. Also, the tickets are sent directly to your phone, so you never have to dig through your email. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account and redeem with the code LOCKEDONNHL. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to our 24/7 streaming channel. Russ, like I said, it is a tough couple of weeks against all Metro opponents. And as is to be expected, the Metro division is looking pretty tough. And we are in a situation right now, which is rare, where the points percentage is actually matching the points in the standings. So the Flyers are in fourth place in the division right now. But if you look at the schedule, obviously we play the Rangers again atop the division, the Islanders, who are pretty close to the Flyers in the standings. And then next week we face the Canes and the Devils and the Pens. So a lot of potential movement happening in the division over the next week or so.
Yeah, it's a pretty big time here. I mean, you look at New Jersey and you're like, they're going to do better. They lost some points when Jack Hughes was out, and maybe they should have played a little better with Hughes out, but that's all right. The Penguins, it's interesting because, Jerry has at least 2 or 3 shutouts, but then there's other games where it's just awful play. But now they lost Raquel, so you kind of wonder where that's going to go. I've said that I wonder if Patrick Kane will be this surprise pickup for them. And now with Raquel out, they would have the space.
The rumblings are certainly there about that. We know that he's obviously not going back to the Rangers, but it's starting to, we knew this would happen as injuries would happen over the course of the season and Patrick Kane would get closer to being healthy. Like the conversation was going to start, and Patrick Kane on the Pittsburgh Penguins would just be the craziest thing, I think. But Yeah, I think your point about their scoring, obviously they had that one 10-2 game against the Sharks, so that kind of
That skewed
statistically
it a little bit.
skewed their goal differential right now, so it makes them look a little better than they
Although
are.
Crosby's having an unbelievable year too. I mean, he just is. But the Canes are an interesting team because they've not really gotten into their groove since losing Freddie Anderson. So, you got to see what that brings. Although, again, when the Canes are going to play the Flyers, they're going to play the same brand of hockey. So that's where the
Yeah.
Flyers have to have a different game plan. So these teams are all a little bit different in the way they play. So this will be challenging for the Flyers.
Yeah, they're gonna have to make a lot of adjustments
Yes.
against each of these different teams. But again, you look at the teams above them, two of which they're playing in the next week or so, the Rangers and Carolina, they've all been playing generally really well on winning streaks. Like we said, the Rangers did lose that one, but basically have won 5 out of the last 6. Now you can say the same about the Flyers. So I think
Sure.
that there is something to that the Flyers are playing well, but I do think this division, with the potential of the Pens and Devils, who are below them in the standings, this is going to be a tough battle over the next couple of months here.
Yeah, again, this might be the time where I would reach down the Lehigh and try and change it up a little bit, just so it gives those other teams something to think about. Because if the Flyers are basically going to roll with the guys they have now, it's going to be pretty easy for those teams to figure out what they're doing and what their tendencies are. And I think adding some new blood into the lineup would be a good idea, but I know that's not happening.
Yeah, yeah, that is for sure. Um, a couple of teams we haven't talked about because the Flyers aren't playing them for a little while. The Washington Capitals. Oh, it's so frustrating that they're playing well because
I
I
mean,
think they were.
Charlie Lindgren's their number one goalie now, it seems, anyhow, or at least they're riding a hot hand. And, he's been good. Ovechkin's been like an assist guy, but something's wrong with him. He's not scoring goals.
Yeah,
Um, years ago, I didn't think he would break the record. I thought last year he's getting closer to the record, but I also knew that once you start getting to a certain age, it becomes a battle to try and even get the 70 goals. Everybody's thinking just, pencil in Ovechkin for 40, but what does he have, 4? And I think 1 or 2 are empty netters. So
yeah.
you look at it that way, and you wonder if Tortorella is going to play into this, because at some point, if he plays the Capitals with John pulling the goalie at like 3 minutes to go in a game, he might be helping Ovechkin this season, but it's down the line. But do I think they're that good? No, I don't.
Yeah, the Flyers don't play the Caps until December 14th. So we've
Okay.
got a couple of weeks until we see them, and things could look a lot different by the time that
Yes.
rolls around. And then, there's a huge gap where, as is the NHL schedule gods decision, they put a bunch of in-division rivalry games at the end of the season. So we go between December 14th and March 1st.
Right.
Before we play the Caps again, which is, like
That's
I said,
nutty.
schedules are weird, but also the Columbus Blue Jackets, who are just a mess. They have won recently, but I think that overall there's just something is in the water there, and I don't know what it is.
Yeah, Brian Hedger just put out a new article, spoke to ownership about it, and they're disappointed and frustrated, and they have a right to be. But again, there's always something very fragile about the psyche of a hockey team, and probably they were all prepared for Babcock, and then they didn't get Babcock. And I just go back to the Avalanche when they had Patrick Waugh and they dumped him early, and then Jared Bednar had to walk in there and sort of take over for Patrick Waugh, and it just didn't work out that first year. And I get the same feeling here. I think Vincent can coach, but I think he's making so many mistakes because he's trying to keep up this hard, play thing. And, Patrick Laine played for him, and he benched Patrick Laine, and I think that hurt Patrick Laine, like, personally. Like, he was really shocked that he got benched. And, I'm not saying it's not just, but I'm also saying Johnson's playing in the minors. Like there's weird things going on there that just defy logic just to, get your team to play a certain way. You're not getting the most out of Johnny Gaudreau. Like, they're just right now they're awful. They're Max Celebrini awful. And I don't think they ever intended on being that. But just to show you how far advanced Ken Johnson is for being in the AHL, he's got 14 points in 8 games. Like, should he really be there? No.
Yeah, there's even Line A trade rumors starting to rumble out there right now as well. So we'll see what happens with them. We'll see how the Flyers net out next week when we talk about that. That will do it for today's show. Hopefully, we'll have a couple of Flyers wins to talk about on Monday. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got mailbag questions, you can tweet us at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on the app formerly known as Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a great weekend, everyone.